Hello, everyone. You're welcome to Leadership Podcast. And of course, we are here again. Today, March 18, 2023, for Nigeria Decides. This time around, we are beaming our searchlights on the states where the governorship and state assembly elections are currently taking place. On February 25, we were also here on Nigerian Decides 2023 for the presidential and national assembly election. Today, the focus is on the states, 28 states to be precise, where the elections for the governorship and state legislatures are taking place. And we would actually be getting some reports, situation reports from the states as they come, and our correspondents are actually on standby to give us a brief of what is actually happening in some of the states as the election progresses. Well, in about 14 states or so, we have governors who are actually angling to secure the mandate for their second term. And of course, we have states where it has never been in the history of this country that another party rule except a particular political party. We'll be looking at some of these states, if you like, you call them hotspots or flashpoints. But the point is that there would certainly or perhaps be major upset in most of these states. Well, Chibuzo, what do you think about the election generally as it is now, unlike what was being anticipated, especially in terms of the, 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 the voter turnout, the, the security situation? So far, what can you actually give us as what you might just think about what you've seen so far or what we are seeing so far?
Okay, thank you, George, and welcome, viewers. Well, so far, reports from the field indicate, and I think a lot of Nigerians are becoming quite conversant with what is playing out now. Reports from the field indicate that there's a good dose of voter party and in flashpoints where people anticipated violence and hoped that security agencies will step up, to ensure violence does not break out. It appeared to be playing out as people predicted, unfortunately, and that predominantly is in Lagos, which has been a very, very sore point in the build up to this election. It's quite unfortunate that the last time we were here, we pointed out that state elections, governorship elections, are usually very, very keenly contested, and they are prone to high level violence. And we did call out the security to ensure that they do all that they can to contain, you know, these issues, resort to violence, ballot box snatching, and all of that. Voter suppression, which is aimed at voter suppression. But it's unfortunate that even when in states like Lagos, where it was quite evident that there was going to be high level violence, nothing appears to have been done to contain such incidents. And we saw that, for instance, in Okota and and some other areas in Lagos where dogs just had a field day disrupting the electoral process and ensuring that perhaps in areas where certain parties have, you know, their votes, expect to get high volume of votes, are scattered. So it is quite unfortunate that nothing was done in that regard. And now we are having to see what many people predicted playing out right before our eyes. And it's a fundamental flaw in this whole process. But again, too, we are looking at the level of voter apathy that has played out this time. And it is a fundamental statement by a number of Nigerians as to how much faith they've lost, perhaps in the process, after the February 25 experience, where they felt, okay, the Independent National Electoral Commission promised so much, built a lot of hope around its capacity to ensure that certain things were done, which is real time, you know, transmission of results. But eventually that didn't play out. And now many people feel, what's the point? If we could come out, engage the process the way we did, and now we are having to see none of all of the promises the INEC made come to reality. What's the point in coming out to engage the process this time around? And so we are seeing a lot of voter apathy. It is quite unfortunate that the people have to stay away from this election, because at the end of the day, who gets to suffer? We now have to see a situation where few people will determine the fate of others by reason of who they elect. As much as what happened in the 25th experience, as much as that was not commendable, we would have expected that people would come out and engage the system this time around and ensure that they go ahead to make a strong statement as to they are not shying away from ensuring that the persons that they deserve emerge, as governor. So it's quite unfortunate. It's not too good a commentary as to what we are experiencing.
Well, thank you, Chibuzo. I think quickly let's begin to see what is happening in this state. And that is where SWA comes in now, because I think we'll start with Kaduna State, where the elections are very hot because Kaduna State is an APC state, but the governing party is actually facing a major threat in the opposition People's Democratic Party. So, what can you tell us briefly, just within just 1 minute?
Well, in Kaduna State, there is voter apathy because a lot of people, they feel bad about the presidential election. Even though in the presidential election, for the first time since a very long time, the People's Democratic Party, which is an opposition party in the state, won 3 senatorial districts. APC did not get any senatorial seat in Kaduna State, and they also won 10 House of Representative seats. APC could barely get 3, while the Labour Party got 2. So this election is a deciding moment because people feel that the voting pattern in the presidential election may likely change, but others are still insisting that no, they are not satisfied with the FPC administration, so they will want to, vote differently, and we saw that in the presidential election. But the reports that there are few people coming out to vote, even though some people say that yes, since there is no queue, they always go there and vote and go and mobilize other people to go and vote also. So let's wait and see what will happen. But INEC needs to do a lot because issue of voter apathy is very, very serious. It has affected the country in many ways. While people were thinking that the beavers will be used in transmitting election results, as INEC failed, so there is so much voter apathy. But people are not even sure whether if they vote, their vote will be
counted. Oh well, let's just quickly we'll be connecting live with our correspondent in Kaduna State, who will tell us of voter turnout, security situation, and the general mood of what is actually happening in Kaduna State, where the APC is struggling to retain the mandate as against the opposition party that is threatening. Aza, you are welcome
Hello.
to the studio.
Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. You are
Yes,
welcome
please,
to
can you
Kaduna.
actually tell us the general situation in Kaduna State in terms of the voter turnout and the security situation? What is actually happening in Kaduna right
Good
away?
afternoon, sir. And you are welcome to Kaduna State. Right now, I'm at Angwan in Kao. This is where the APC governorship candidate, Senator Obasani, just voted some few minutes ago. The governor of the state, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, voted at Angwan Seriki polling unit just about 20 minutes ago. The situation in Kaduna here is very calm. The security situation is very calm here. There is no incidents of violence so far in the state. The voters, in terms of voters turnout, the voters turnout is very low in some polling units I visited. Like some polling units, the INEC officials and security people are there without voters. Some of them are even waiting for voters to come and cast their votes. Hello, sir.
Well, what is the situation report in terms of security? Have there been any case of violence or thuggery in the state?
So, as I've said earlier, there is no incident of security breach in the state capital here. Everything is moving on fine. The, the, the political temperature is calm for now. Voters are still voting in some polling units. Some polling units have already finished their voting because voters are no longer coming.
What is the situation in terms of the functioning of the BVA, the beavers, and other INEC machines?
Sir, I can tell you that some of the polling units I visited, there is no incidence of beavers malfunction. There is nothing at all. I think the INEC staff, the officials, and security people, unlike the previous presidential election in Kaduna State, this time around, the INEC officials turn out very early as 8 o'clock in the morning. There are some polling stations I visited. INEC officials and security people were already on ground to commence the voting process. And there is no incident like that in Kaduna State
All
here.
right.
The
All
beavers
right,
are
guys. I
functioning
think
well.
let's now look at one situation. There is we know that Kaduna State is the state where the opposition PDP staged an upset, recorded an upset, defeating the governing party, the APC, in the February 25 presidential election. Now, in the governorship race, what can you tell us about the electorate? Where do you think they actually tinkering to? And in terms of the favorite, what can you tell us about the political parties, the APC, the PDP, and perhaps the Labour Party.
Early until after the voting process in Kaduna State here. As of now, we just spoke with the governor of the state. After he casted his votes, he granted a media interview with journalists, and he claimed there are voters intimidation in southern part of the state. This is what he said when he granted interview to the journalists covering at his polling unit in Nangwansareke. But for now, what I can say for now is the situation is still unclear until after voting. I think in the evening, that is when we will see the direction where the direction is going. But for now, I can tell you, I cannot categorically inform you that this is the party that will win. No, if I'm saying so, I don't think I'm not give you accurate reports, sir.
All right, Azar, there are people saying that there is massive vote buying in most of the polling units. Did you experience that?
Sir, in all the polling units I visited, the issue of vote buying, what I've gathered is this. Some of the political parties have already bought their votes yesterday. Is not on election day. Because at the Angwan polling units, as you can see here, even at the background, where I'm staying in Kawo now, right now, there are team security operatives everywhere gathered here. And I don't think anybody will buy votes at this point. But what I've learned is that most of the voters have collected their money since yesterday to vote for their candidate.
All right. I know there's a general concern about voter apathy, but with particular reference to Kaduna,
Mm.
what is the really the reason that you get for why people are not turning out in Kaduna particularly?
So, based on my investigations, some of the voters, their preferred candidate lost election in the previous presidential and national assemblies election. And some of them decided not to come out because some of their preferred candidate lost out. That is uh, reason number one, according to my investigations. Some of them don't have claim they don't have transport fare to move from one location where they're supposed to vote. For that reason, they are at home. And some of them decided not to vote.
Well, thank you very much, Azza, for that update in the situation in Kaduna in the ongoing governorship and state assembly election. Well, you see why you heard what Azza said. He said the voter apathy has to do with the cash crunch. That most of the voters don't have transport, don't have money to transport themselves to their polling unit where they will actually cast their votes. And that's one negatives of this CBN cashless policy. But looking at Kaduna, Kaduna is a state where people are watching with consummate exactitude because in the presidential election, the PDP, the opposition PDP, trans the governing party APC, and we know very well that sometimes the voting pattern for the presidential election might not be the voting pattern for the governorship election. Somebody who is conversant in that state, what is the fate of the APC in Kaduna?
Well,
From your own view,
a
anyway.
ruling party, you can't just look down on a ruling party because even when we were analyzing the presidential election among the three candidates, and we did say that there is no way an opposition party will go to a contest with a ruling party with a divided house. But unlike before, specifically in Kaduna State, I've seen a situation whereby the opposition are more united now, because I've seen videos, individuals doing videos, promoting the opposition candidates. And so, if, as I said, that some people say that they are not going to vote because their candidate lost
well.
out, didn't do well, then that means that it may be affecting the ruling party, because it's the ruling party that didn't get more seats in Kaduna State. Yes, because PDP got like 3 senatorial districts and 10 House of Representatives. So if, as I is talking about, maybe the president in particular, or those who contested for Senate, or those who contested for the House of Representative seat, feel that, okay, their candidate didn't do well, that's why they are not voting, then I think it would be to the negative of the ruling party. But why won't people go out to vote? It's because of what happened in the last election. Generally, most voters, they are not inclined with any political parties, political party. They are not inclined with any candidate. Some of them just want to vote, because it's their legitimate right to vote. Some of them want to vote to ensure that, okay, there is change of government. Some people want to vote to ensure that, okay, people who are there continue to be there. And so, with the fact that election in Nigeria, you don't vote far away from where you register. So, issue of saying cash crunch is affecting people from voting. Where did they get the cash that time at the presidential election that make them to vote? Now that even ATMs in Kaduna were loading old Naira notes. And on election day, there is restriction of movement. So you don't move long distance. So, well, we are yet to actually know the real reason why people are not going out to vote. But I think that if voters do not go out to vote, it will affect the outcome of the election, either negatively or positively. Because if voters do not vote, then people who want to manipulate the process will use that opportunity and manipulate the process. But if you go out to vote, it will help, ensuring that what you want comes to stand.
Thank you very much. Well, for Kaduna State, let's just say it's too close to call, because according to our reporter from the state, it is too early now to begin to think of who will carry the day, the political party that will carry the day in Kaduna. Well, it is an ongoing process, and very soon it will become clear. But let's quickly go now to Kano State. Well, the ancient city of Kano is actually completely out of the political equation in terms of the voting pattern, because in the state, the presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, has displaced other political parties in the state. In the presidential election, the people of Kano came out en masse to vote, voting for the presidential candidate of the NMPP. And we all know that Kwankwaso has a very large followership due to his Kwankwasia movement. And now, the permutation is that in Kano State, the people will actually be looking at the candidate of the NMPP, although the Governor Ganduje, Governor Ganduje will actually be fighting the battle of his life to ensure that the governing NPC retain the mandate. Well, before we discuss the situation in Kano, I think it's better we get a brief of what is actually happening there. And of course, our correspondent and the bureau chief of the Northwest geopolitical zone is on standby to give us the situation in Kano. I'm talking of Benjamin Isaiah. Isaiah, you're welcome to the studio.
Oh, thank you so very much for having me.
Yes, what is actually happening in Kanu presently? What is the situation like in terms of security and the turnout of the voters?
All right, thank you very much. I think the situation is not any different. It's all about voter apathy everywhere. As I speak to you now, I am speaking from Danwari in Sabongeri East Fage local government area. And information available to me is that during the presidential election, you could hardly see a space here to even move. All right, the crowd was massive, but that is not the situation now. As some of the persons I have interacted with outside said, their votes on the 25th of February never counted, and as such, they won't want to waste their time. And this particular polling station has about 11 polling units, and I can tell you for free, it's just some few minutes past one now. Most of the INEC officers are only sitting doing almost nothing because people only came out one after the other to just cast their vote. So there's a general voter apathy everywhere. People didn't turn up. That is the situation. But of course, in terms of the security, I can tell you that everywhere is calm. There's still restriction of movement of persons and vehicles, except for those on election duty. So far, so good. There's been no news whatsoever of any major violence, except in Chiranchi, where some talks were said to have wanted to disrupt the election there, but they were quickly apprehended by the security forces, and the election has continued again smoothly. So far, so good. The situation, I must say, is actually very tense in Kanu, considering the contenders. The governor, who is the APC candidate, and the present deputy governor, I mean, certainly are not leaving any stone unturned. Even though at an interview shortly after he voted, he said that God knows whoever will win. And I think that's a good sportsmanship. So, meaning to say, whoever wins, he will accept it in good faith. But again, you cannot rule out the possibility of anything happening in Kanu. And I can tell you for free that nobody will be able to come out in clear terms to say this is who will win and this is who will not win, because it is certainly going to be very close to call. As we speak now, the NMPP candidate, who was either to in 2019 the PDP candidate, the Abagida Gida, he is also a very strong contender in this race. Now he also has his own backbone, a two-time governor of the state, talking about the presidential candidate of the NMPP, Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, who is solidly behind him. Of course, don't forget, Ganduje, who is the incumbent governor, is also not going to leave any stone unturned to ensure that his deputy, Gawuna of the APC, also emerges. Now, Shekara, who is now in the PDP, also has the Wali, whom he is likely also going to give his support. But, analysts that I interacted with said, you see, anything can happen because for them, the likes of the Wali in PDP and the Tanko Yakase in PRP are all working for APC because they both served in the government of the APC, in this present government of Gandhi. So that is what some people are insinuating. But be that as it may, as it is now, I know the race majorly is between the candidate of the NMPP and that of the APC. So, but so far so good. Election is going on peacefully, albeit with low turnout of voters. In terms of security, everything is in place. Security arrangements are very tight, and I can tell you, no skirmishes anywhere so far recorded. But of course, I do know that earlier on, about 10 NMPP members who had disguised themselves as election observers were apprehended, and I learned they've been taken away for proper questioning. So far, so good. That is the situation. I have been to quite a number of local governments within Kano Metropolis now. I've been to Nasarawa, I've been to Taroni, Wege, Wudi, and all of that. So, but the situation is just the same. Low turnout. That is the situation now.
Well, Isaiah, let's just get a brief of the INEC machines. In the presidential election, there were issues of malfunctioning of the beavers. What is the situation today in Kano? Have we had any issue of the beavers failing, or difficulties in capturing of the voters and all that.
58 polling units within Kano Metropolis now are cutting across 4 local governments. Now, I can tell you that the beavers are working very, very effectively. Uh, Now, whoever, for those that have issues with their thumbprint, their facial capturing was done, and there is no excuse. There are no challenges whatsoever, because most of the polling units I visited, I took time to interact with the presiding officers to find out if they have challenges with the beavers machine, and I can tell you none of them. For all of them, the beavers machine are working very effectively. However, it is one thing for the beavers machine to work effectively. It is going to be another thing for the results to be uploaded right from the polling unit at the end of the election. So that is what we are hoping, so that the controversies that surrounded the presidential election will be minimal this time around, if not done away with completely. Now, like I said from the beginning, the good thing about this election now is the fact that in terms of logistics arrangement on the part of the INEC, I think they have done impressively well, because at 8 o'clock, most polling units have started voting. All right, most polling units have started voting. INEC officials are arrived in their numbers in good time, and voting had commenced very, very early. So far, within those polling units and across this local government within Kano Metropolis that I have visited, there are no issues of beavers malfunctioning or any other issue whatsoever regarding the electoral material. Because there are little issues such as shortage of electoral material like the markers. Either they said the markers were not given to them, but that is minute compared to the general successes that is being recorded so far so good with the usage of the electoral materials available to them.
All right. Isaiah, is there any issue of voter inducement? Talking about vote buying, do you witness any?
The issue of vote buying, you rarely can see that happening very clearly. Areas I have visited so far so good, there are no reported cases of any vote buying whatsoever. But of course, you can't rule out the fact of having 1 or 2 persons talking to 1 or 2 persons to help them vote candidates of their choice and all of that. That is a possibility. But in terms of physical vote buying with physical cash, all the areas I've visited so far, there is no witness of such.
Well, thank you very much, Benjamin Isaiah, for that update from Kano State. Well, Chibuzo, Kano is one of the hotspots because we have very, very strong political bigwigs from that state. You see the Kwankwasia factor from the presidential candidates of the NNPP, Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, who almost swept the state in the presidential election. And of course, we know that the Ibrahim Shakaro factor is also there. Ibrahim Shakaro had played the political prostitute of listen, where he jumping from one party to the other, left the APC to PDP, for PDP to the, and was giving his reasons. That state appears to be a state that might there might be a major upset where the opposition, the governing APC might get it tough because of the Kwankwasia factor. And it disappears the governorship candidate of the NNPP might just carry the day if what happened in the presidential election repeats itself in today's governorship election. What is your take on the situation?
Well, first, I want to commend the people of Kano State and perhaps the political leaders so far, thus far, because there were a lot of fears that there will be violence in the course of these elections. But so far, it does appear as if they've managed to ensure that there's no breakout of, there's no violent situation so far. But the concern is always post elections what happens after the
The
election,
election.
when the election results begin to turn out. But so far, it's really commendable that they've been able to keep it civil and peaceful. Kano was always going to be a state to watch, and like you did point out, we saw what played out with the presidential elections. But again, now we are beginning to see the voter apathy thing. So it's quite edgy and quite unpredictable to know how this is going to go because we saw massive. In fact, Kano had the highest number of voter turnout, I think, in the presidential elections, and we also saw the very high margins with which Kwankwaso won that election. It was the highest of any presidential candidate. So now people would expect, many would have expected that we'll see a repeat of that, but it does appear as if the momentum is not there, and it plays into the narrative of whether now we might not know, maybe perhaps we'll get him back to really give an insight into why, because I believe every state will have its own reason for why there's voter apathy. No two states are the same. So maybe by the time we get to hear from Isaiah again, he might have to give us peculiar reasons as to why the voter turnout is not as high as what we have, in the presidential election. So, but whether the voter apathy is going to affect, the turnout of this governorship election is something to really look out for. That would be really, really interesting to look out for. But so far, so good. I think the political actors are going to keep it civil and safe. And it was always going to be a battle between, Kwankwaso and Ganduje. It's more like a grudge match, And if you look at what played out in 2019, it was really, really close, very, very close. In fact, some people would argue that it took the intervention of the presidency, to push it in Ganduje's favor in some way. So whether we are going to have a repeat of that, it's quite likely. It's quite likely, but the voter apathy situation might make it a bit more unpredictable, as events unfold.
Well, thank you, Mishua. In the presidential election, what we saw was that Kwankwaso was sweeping the state, got almost 1 million votes, while the governor was able to struggle to get some votes for the presidential candidate of his party, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And of course, some of let's just say the vote for the APC, even as much as the Kwankwaso factor, the Kwankwasia win blew the state, would actually give it to the governor that he was able to squeeze out some votes for his party, which really added up to determine the victory of President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But we can always say that it's not actually easy for the governing party in the state. And in the governorship election, what do you think about the voting pattern? If what happens in the presidential election turns out to be the same voting pattern, I think APC is actually in for a big surprise.
Yeah, because the incumbent governor has been facing issue of alleged corruption. So videos that move around. So that alone made the people of Kano State not to trust him any longer. And the fact that Kwankwaso, a presidential candidate of NNPP, who is coming from Kano State, and also want to, ensure that he has his party is rooted in that particular state. I think the APC will be having a very tough time because despite the voter apathy, I think a winner must emerge, even though it is too close to start saying that this is the person that will win and all that. But from the feelers on ground, and from the result of the 2019 and the 2023 presidential election, and you will know that the NNPP may spring surprises because as we speak now, they have two senators. NNPP have two senators and many House of Representatives seats. So these are the same people that will move into their constituency and tell them that,
Vote
look,
their voters.
what you started, make sure that you finish it. But the report of voter apathy is actually, surprising, But that is why we must ensure that we make our institutions strong. All this issue of voter apathy is the blame should be solely put on INEC. This issue of voter apathy, because one, INEC and political parties, they don't mobilize voters. They are supposed to mobilize voters very well. But we have seen that it's the civil society organizations that have been mobilizing voters, telling the voters that no, this time around is beavers, is a machine that INEC is going to use. And INEC also assured the people that people that we are saying that they are not going to transmit the election result via beavers, that is fake news, that let them assure that they are serving the Nigerian people and that they have invested so much on the beavers. They are going to transmit the election result on real time. And on a day of election, these people were having issues here and there. They couldn't come out to tell Nigerians their problem. That means that that particular issue was deliberate. And that single act alone have made many Nigerians, to lose hope in the process, because they believe that, okay, since the Electoral Act, have put power to a body that will not be strong to ensure that their their vote count, and the electoral institution will just do what they want to do at any time, even without proper communication with the people, then what is the need of going out to vote? That is what is causing this massive low voter turnout. But the politicians who have been masterminding rigging are actually happy with all this scenario, because if the voters do not go out to vote, it's an opportunity for them to manipulate, because they know all the polling units, they know the result of the last election, so it will be easier for them to manipulate the process in their favor. So I think something needs to be done on INEC, and this issue of Electoral Offences Commission must come to limelight, so that even the officials of the electoral bodies, if they offend or if they violate the process, they should be prosecuted. I see no reason why somebody who said that he is going to assure everybody that he is going to do this, and at the last hour he didn't do it, and nobody is inviting such a person for questioning. That means that person can do whatever he wants to do, and so it's discouraging the people, and it's the effect of what has happened before is what we are seeing today. It will be very difficult for people to be mobilized to vote in an election as it happens in 2019, because people will have lost interest in the process. So
Lost confidence.
a lot of things need to be put in place. But I want to tell Nigerians that, look, if you do not go out to vote, that is what the election riggers want. By the way, they will always do everything to make sure that they have their own way. So it is better for you to vote. Keep trying. If you tried the last time, it didn't work. Keep trying. Go out. Go and vote in the gubernatorial election. You still have the time now to go and vote. Because if you go out and you vote, you are putting the system under pressure to do the right thing. But with a small lapses, and you decide that you won't vote again, that means you are asking the people who are actually masters in rigging to continue with
what they're
own
doing.
ways. Yes.
And I think in addition to what this one has said, I think the conflicting signals too from the opposition has not really helped. And I said this with all sense of responsibility, considering that yes, they feel aggrieved and they've gone to court and they're questioning the process that led to the outcome of a presidential election. But when you put out statements like, oh, the INEC chairman is this, the institution is compromised, the INEC chairman should be sacked, and in the other breath, you are trying to say, okay, go out and engage the elections, the signal becomes conflicting for the voter. The voter feels, okay, if a key stakeholder in this process is saying, oh, this process is compromised, this person managing the whole, the person at the helm of this whole thing is fraud, well, in quote, allegedly fraudulent and all of that. So why should I go and engage the process? I would have expected that the opposition would, at least they've gone to court to challenge the presidential, but they would have still gone ahead to rally their members to come out and engage the process in the governorship polls. without, as much as they want to point out the lapses of INEC, not create a conflicting signal or a conflicting narrative as to, the commission's, how do I put it now, ability to conduct the election. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to.
I get it.
So there's a conflicting. It would have been okay if they just encouraged their voters to come out en masse and engage the process, and not also send the signal of, oh, the process is already compromised and should be sacked. If you say you should be sacked, and the next minute you are saying people should come out, it's a conflicting signal as far as I'm concerned. So I think maybe those things too should have been properly looked into by the opposition.
Well, still back to Kano, we know, I think Kano should be one of those states where it now became like a one-party state situation where I think the state had been governed by the opposition, the AMPP, which started like APP, although PDP has actually come to play some major roles. We know Kwankwaso was among the 5 governors that left the PDP. They come from PDP when there was this clamor that former President Goodluck Jonathan should just vote for one single term and give way. You know, the likes of then Governor Babangida Aliyu, Kwankwaso, then we know Womack of Sokoto State, and Muritala Nyako of Adamawa State, leaving the PDP to join forces with the APC.
You're always good with having G group of governors.
Yeah.
we had
Just like
G7
what we
then,
say, C9 in the
and now we're
PDP,
having G5.
G5. So we can use that to imagine what will actually play out. Because at the end of the day, we can now see very clearly that there is nothing at stake, or there might be nothing at stake for the PDP and the APC in the state. If what happened in the presidential election is what will actually be the case in the ongoing governorship election in the state. If the NMPP seized Kano, hold on to Kano, then we know very well that Kano will now become a state that is uniquely tied to a one political party. And I think it will take a very long time for the major parties, APC and PDP, to stage a comeback.
Well, well, it might not work, might not, because the most intriguing or the most interesting geopolitical zone with regards to, I'm talking as a block now, with regards to how they vote,
their voting strength
has always been the Northwest.
Mm.
If you look at the Northwest, maybe some states in the Northeast, maybe like Bauchi, like Bombay. If you look at the Northwest has been the most unpredictable region when it comes to how they vote internally at state level. I'm not talking presidential, I'm talking at state level now. I say this because it is in this region that you will see that 1 minute you have this party as ruling party, the next minute or the next cycle of election you have the opposition taking over. If you go to Sokoto State, we saw that play out, this way and that. This minute you have AMPP, by the next election you had PDP, by the next election you had APC, by the next election you had PDP. You go to Kaduna, the same thing as well. It's this way and that. This party, this election cycle, the next election cycle, you have this other party. You go to perhaps the only consistent state that has, retained that one party arrangement is perhaps Zamfara. But you also had PDP at some point, and all of that. So it will be really, really interesting to see how Kano plays out. But to say that when NNPP wins, it will become a one-party state. By the next election cycle, things might change. So the voting pattern of people in the northwest is pretty hard to predict because, and I think it is perhaps due to the nature of their politics at time. What are the issues that will drive the politics of the state at that particular time? Who are the characters and the key stakeholders at that particular time? And what is the mood of the people at that particular time? So it's usually very difficult to pin them to a particular party going into, in the course of electoral cycles. Yeah. So I think that is why it's pretty interesting how they vote, in the Northwest region.
Well, let's now leave the north a bit. I think we should look at also the let's go to the south states of Delta, where we have a very strong political billionaire, the deputy senate president running as a governorship candidate of the APC. Delta State is where we have the vice presidential candidate of the PDP, and the state is one of the strongholds where Labour Party made a very strong made it, recorded an upset in the presidential election, and then it is a three-horse race in Delta State where Labour Party came with its hurricane, causing some kind of upset and destabilizing the state. Orikonobi was able to upstage the PDP and even the APC that is actually trying to use the federal might, the advantage that it is the government at the center to display. But today's election might just be all surprises because I think the voting pattern might change because of what the people might think. I think Delta State is one state that might want to actually align with the government at the center, given the fact that a very formidable candidate like the deputy senate president is actually running for the APC. And Okowa being a major factor in the PDP might just actually be struggling to get his people, the followership of his people, to actually restore the mandate of his party, the PDP. What do you think might be the situation in Delta State, a state that we also consider to be a one-party state? But the PDP had always ruled Delta State from 1999 when the country returned to democracy.
But you should remember that Omo Agege, who is a contestant under the platform of the APC, he was in the PDP before, but he broke away to come to the Senate and later joined the APC. So with that, he has been able to, gather followership in the Delta Central. All the governorship candidates, they are from Delta Central because Delta, they believe in zoning, so they zone the the gubernatorial ticket to the central senatorial district. Yes, but what will work against the PDP is the fact that the incumbent governor is not in good time with a lot of people that matters in the state because we have seen a group calling themselves Delta. It's a group of Delta people, and mostly they are from the PDP that broke away and joined the APC candidate, Omo Agege, in the APC. They were in the PDP, but they were still working for the APC candidate. And I was opportune to be in Delta, so we get some kind of feelers from the people. Since the election, since the candidates are from, most of them are from the Delta Central, we will see a situation whereby anybody that is more popular will be the one that will win. And we have seen Omo Agege, who is deputy Senate president. So he has been popular, and a lot of people have said that yes, he has represented his constituency very well. But then Sharif also is the speaker of Delta State House of Assembly. So he also is popular in his own right in the state, and he will also be looking at seeing how his party will retain that governorship, because as a speaker he has friends who are lawmakers and all that, so they may likely vote for him. So, but for the Ken Pela, the Labour Party gubernatorial candidate, who is less popular among these two candidates, he has the OB movement behind him. And you know, this movement is very massive that you cannot just predict. But with the voter apathy, most of this voter apathy that people are talking about, I'm attributing it to the supporters of Peter Obi, because they believe that they were treated unfairly in the presidential election. So no need to
even waste their time coming.
Yes, and more. But I think it's an opportunity for them to keep pressing. You think if you are looking for freedom, you don't get it with a platter of gold. So they have to keep pressing, and I hope that they will go out and vote for their candidate in Delta State. But if not, the race is a very tight one, you know. But the obedient supporters, the APC supporters, and the PDP supporters, they are unpredictable, because all of them, you know, may be looking at somebody who they can trust, because there is no incumbent among these three contestants. Yes, and so it is difficult now to predict, but from the feelers on ground, this race will be between the APC and the PDP. Yes, because the APC, they have a deputy Senate president. The PDP, they have a speaker of the State House of Assembly, and you know what that means.
And the speaker enjoys the support of the incumbent governor,
Of course,
where the power of incumbency is actually battling with what we might describe as federal might.
well, the last presidential election, this issue of power of incumbency was not actually there. If you check the results in the state, who
20 incumbents couldn't deliver their.
Yes,
You cannot
so
tell
you can see that.
You cannot tell it's why, because at the end of the day, you know the pattern of Nigerian politics,
Yes.
where we don't be surprised that the bandwagon effect might just play out now. So, well, the APC have it at the center. We might not just marginalize ourselves and be in the opposition. Why not we just join, follow the crowd, because everybody now is getting on the bandwagon. Well, Chibuzo, despite the fact that the governorship candidate of the PDP is enjoying support from other political parties, we know that 8 political parties step down, and there are 8 political parties and the leadership of 8 political parties and their governorship candidate step down for the governorship candidate of the PDP in Delta State. But despite that, it appears the deputy Senate president, Omo Agege, appears poised to win, because Omo Agege appears to be popular in that state. Recently, when he told the people that, look, if I become your governor, you people can always be rest assured that you will get the 13th salary. That will spark some kind of interest and serious jubilation from among the civil servants. And those civil servants turn around to give the deputy Senate president the most confident assurance we can always think of, that they will do whatever to ensure that he is governor. And whenever elections, when you talk of election in the state, you can't rule out the strength of civil servants who tends to be in control. Because most people in the rural community will always look at the people in government. And civil servants most times who are considered that, is it not you people that are in government? And whenever they tell the people in the rural area, or the artisans, the traders, the businessmen, and say, see where we should go, they tend to listen to them. Don't you think that the situation on ground with Omo Agege in the race, there is nothing the APC can do to to change the tide in the state.
Thank you very much. The Delta State is like Yusuf said, it's one of those interesting states to look out for. The variables are just plenty. The variables are just plenty. On the part of the PDP, well, you know, most times incumbents are usually the rating of incumbents are usually on the decline when they are in office. It's rarely difficult to have an incumbent live on a high. Most times they live on the low. So naturally there's always that challenge. Now, but specifically to Delta State and the PDP, there are a number of issues that the governor has had to deal with. One, there's a complaint about the debt burden of the state, that he's been borrowing so much money, and all of that, that does not reflect in governance in the state. There's that burden, there's that allegation, let me put it that way. Secondly, um, there's a complaint too of neglect, that most of the projects he has been doing have been focused mainly in Delta North, where he is from. And so there's a sense, or there's an allegation that he has neglected Delta Central and Delta South. You Also, there's the thing about, I think there's a salary problem at some point where there was a protest that um, salaries are not being paid up to date in the state. So these are issues that the governor, you know, would have to. These are burdens that the governor carried, that his that the PDP candidate will naturally have to bear, because of course he's part and parcel of the government, having served as having who being the speaker in the state. So these are things he would have to carry as burden going into this election. Israel rightly pointed out that the three of them are from, the central, place. So naturally, you would expect that the battle within the central will be very fierce, and they are going to split their votes there. So the challenge will be who gets more votes outside in North Central, Delta North, and Delta South might come up come up tops in this election. In Delta North, that is where the governor comes from. But in Delta North, we've seen Labour Party make so much inroads there, such that even the minority leader couldn't return. But it's also interesting because the senatorial elections was won by PDP in that same in Delta North. So it's quite intriguing to see how Delta North will turn out with their votes. But we know that Labour Party has a strong showing there, no doubt. In Delta Central, um, it's going to be really interesting for Omo Agege, because what he also has going for him is that the former governor Ibori, who is still seen as the major godfather in Delta politics, appears to have his backing, appears to be backing Omo Agege going into this. Um, the relationship between Okowa and Ibori has not been so rosy, although Okowa has a good rapport, a fairly good rapport with Uduaga, even though the daughter lost the governor an election recently, and Ibori won under the PDP. But there are reports that Ibori does not really is not really politically inclined towards Okowa's successor. Uh, so he's likely going to lean towards, or he has been leaning towards Omo Agege. How that is going to swing in selection is also something to look out for. In Delta South, where you have majorly the job people and all of that, the James manager people and all of that who were hard done by what played out in the primaries are also going to be looking out perhaps to gain their pound of flesh against the PDP. So it's really going to be interesting how this plays out. But again, the ability of these other two parties to take away votes from the Labour Party might also, because I've seen where they've been trying to
sorry to cut you short. Isuwa said something that me too I'm beginning to buy into. Isuwa said the supporters of Labour Party, otherwise known as obedient, are typical Nigerians who are not resilient at all. These are Nigerians that are easily prone to giving up because
it was purely the obedient.
because what they actually expected was that the Labour Party would take the reins of power at the center. And once that didn't work out,
there are two things.
There are two things with they are now discouraged.
Even Obi said it himself. Obi said there's the Obi movement, and then there's the Labour Party. So there are two things. The Obi people, the Obi movement, wants that these two parties in the state, PDP and APC, in Delta State, are trying to woo. We've seen the daughter of Okowa talking to the Obi movement people, not Labour Party now. You understand? And we've also seen Omo Agege trying to tailor his campaign in a way that, appeals to the Obi movement people. So that was where I was going to before the ability of these two parties, Omo Agege and Sheriff, to glean away people from the Obi movement is going to be very key also going into this election. So it's really going to be an interesting one to look out for.
Thank you very much, Lichubuzo. Talking of the Labour Party, that should take us to Lagos State, the commercial hub of the country, a state where the Labour Party staged the major upset. Hurricane Obi swept Lagos, and until now, in the country's political history, the presidential election in Lagos is what analysts are calling the major upset that has ever taken place in this country. Because most Nigerians wonder how a Peter Obi that will be considered as a political lady pusher will come from nowhere and displace a political colossus like Tinubu, who governed the state for 8 years, has built a very strong political network, and at the end of the day had been considered as a leader of the governing party in the country. We always refer to him as the APC national leader. And what we saw in the presidential election was Labour Party, not PDP, Labour Party, displacing the governing party, winning the presidential election, even though it was by a slim margin, but that was a major upset. Analysts are wondering how it happened. Today, the governorship election is on, and the situation we've been hearing is that the Labour Party candidate again is very popular in the state. Is it Rose Vivo? And that alone has made Salam Olu to go out to do an extraordinary campaign we have never seen. But before we continue, before we talk about Lagos, let's hear what our correspondent, editor news in the Southwest, or we can even describe him as regional editor, Southwest, who will have to tell us about the situation currently in Lagos. I'm talking of the person of George Okoje. He's on standby now to give us a brief about what is actually happening in Lagos. George Okoje, you're welcome to the studio.
Okay, you are welcome, sir.
Can you actually tell us is the situation now in Lagos? Because that is one hotspot, one flashpoint. All eyes are actually fixated on to actually understand what will happen to the governing APC. Because the presidential candidate of the APC, who is now president-elect, comes from that state. And we are very sure that Tinubu will not allow what the Labour Party did to him in the presidential election to repeat itself in the governorship election. What is the general situation in Lagos in terms of security and voter turnout, George?
Okay, in Lagos right now, the voting exercise is relatively peaceful, I can say 80% peaceful. Though you have cases of pockets of voters harassment and intimidation in some places like Okota, Shomolu, and Ikeja area of the state. But I can tell you it's 80% peaceful. Then on the issue of upset, I don't think this time around there may not be upset, because in that particular election you are talking about, it was a slim victory for the Labour Party. And if you go down the memory lane, you know the dynamics of voting pattern in Lagos. The presidential election has always been different from the governorship election. And don't you also remember that APC, from inception, from the advent of democracy in Nigeria, that the Lagos state has been governed by the APC, and they have a very solid structure. They have a very strong support base. So it's going to be very difficult for the Labour Party to pull upset this time around.
Well, what of the beavers? Unlike the presidential election, when they say it was issues of beavers malfunction, what is actually happening today in terms of the INEC machines?
I personally have voted, and I can tell you that the way I voted, that the beavers was functioning effectively. And I've also visited so many polling units, and I can also tell you that the beavers is not a challenge at all. That the beavers is functioning, optimally. Yeah, it's functioning well.
Are they transmitting results real time?
No, I've not seen any of the polling units where they are transmitting the results. But they are using the beavers to accredit the voters.
Well, George, in your own view, I know very well that you are always there, and you are right there at the heart of the electoral process where elections are taking place. What would you tell us about the mood of the voting pattern? What do you think Lagosians are thinking? From your own understanding, between the governing APC, the PDP, and the Labour Party, what can you tell us about what you might consider as your own personal prediction about who might actually carry the day at the end of the day?
The director, right now, the APC in Lagos said they are determined to retain the state. I can tell you that for free. And the PDP is like, the PDP has been seriously decimated here after their woeful outing the last time. And if you look at, on the eve of the election, very recently, 2-3 days back, you see the chieftains of that party moving in a mass to join forces with the APC. And in the area of the struggles of the LP, that is where you can witness some, what I can say, harassments and intimidation of voters. So likely the APC, I think the APC are likely to retain the state.
Okay, George, can you tell us about the voters' turnout? Is there voter apathy? And again, is there voter inducement or vote buying? Let's hear from you.
In terms of voters' apathy, in the areas where the Lagos Island, where the governor voted, there's not like a voter apathy in that area, because a lot of people they came out en masse. A lot of voters came out en masse to cast their votes. But in those strongholds of where the Igbos are highly concentrated, that is the area you have this voter apathy. Like some people are afraid, they've been scared not to come out, and they are very afraid to come out to cast their vote in those areas. But generally, the turnout in Lagos is impressive.
What is your impression of the response time of the security operatives to concerns about election violence in the state? This is coming against the backdrop of complaints about, and it's incidences that are played out in the build-up to this. What is your impression of the response time?
If I don't know, we've been sending a lot of materials online. If you check what we have sent online so far, there is watertight security in Lagos. There is no police unit to get to Lagos that you will not find any security officer, and they are ground monitoring what is happening. I don't think the security is a challenge in Lagos right now because you have a high level of security presence in virtually all the police units in Lagos Island, mainland, and other areas right now. I think the areas where they may have challenge is all those riverine areas. We have not been there, but the police units have visited. You have watertight security in those areas.
Well, George, we know very well that in the presidential election, there were allegations of disenfranchisement. The Labour Party supporters were accusing the INEC of allowing the supporters of APC to stop them from voting. It was in Lagos we heard that once you come to the polling unit, they will ask you, hope you are coming to vote for APC. If not APC, you will not vote here. And we saw issues of violence where some of the polling units were scattered. We saw fire burning. Even a prominent Nigerian actress was now crying foul, saying that Buhari and Tinubu are the same. That everything about the election and INEC is a scam. And we saw pockets of violence everywhere. How can you tell us what is the difference this time around? What is the situation in terms of the governorship election compared to what we had at during the presidential poll?
But in that particular presidential poll, the LP that are complaining, they won Lagos. They won Lagos. But for today, I've not seen any of those things that you are talking about. I've not seen anybody intimidated or prevented from voting. But there are reports, unconfirmed reports, that in some area like Okota, in Shomolu, then some areas of Ikeja, then Koshofe area, there are some voters were intimidated. There were cases of voter suppression in those areas, but I've not confirmed it. But by and large, I think it's okay. It's relatively peaceful. We've not really confronted any case of violence or people warning other people trying not to vote. But I can tell you that in areas like Shomolu, there are unconfirmed reports that in Shomolu, in Okota area, there are some people were intimidated, some voters were intimidated. Voters, they felt we're not going to come and vote for the APC, were intimidated, and a lot of them were scared to come and vote.
Well, thank you very much, George.
You also spoke, let me just quickly respond. You also spoke about vote buy, voter inducement and vote buy. Yeah. This thing they call vote buying has gone digital. They don't do it in the open again. So I think as of yesterday, if anybody that wanted to buy vote, this effect of cash crunch has also affected them. So I think it's been done electronically, it's been done digitally.
Well, let's look at the state. Two things first. Assessment of INEC official. How early was the election? How early did they start? And then let's look at the state assembly elections. We know that Lagos State is one state where there are fears that the Labour Party may claim most of the seats in the state houses, in the State House of Assembly. We have the likes of Desmond Elliott standing the risk of being displaced by Labour Party candidates. What can you tell us about the state assembly election and the
in the state assembly election? If we also go down the memory lane, if we have to reminisce on the presidential election, you will discover that the 8 senatorial seats were taken by the APC. 20 out of the 24 seats were taken by the APC for the House of Reps. In that related constituency, I don't think Desmond Elliott will be easily displaced in that place. Given the fact that the Labour Party candidate there has also been complaining that the supporters have been attacked on a daily basis. So the area where they are having voters intimidation that particular constituency is part of it. So I don't think it will be easy to displace Desmond Elliott in that particular constituency, given the fact that the APC, they don't want to let go at all. They are so determined and they want to retain their governor, the governors of the state. I don't think in the area of House of Assembly, I think the APC is likely to retain most of those seats in the state House of Assembly.
Okay, just give us an update. There's been so much violence, in the build-up to this election. How many arrests have been made so far?
But I don't think I have that statistic right now, and I don't think people have been. I don't think anybody has been arrested. Even the MC Oluomo, the chairman of the chairman of their park, that used to be the NURTW chief, that was alleged to have been threatening a particular old lady, has not been arrested. I don't think the police have made any arrest to that effect.
Well, thank you, George Okoje, Regional Editor, Southwest. It was very nice having you live.
Thank you, sir.
Lagos State. Well, we've heard what George has said, but then Lagos is still Lagos. Anything can happen. So, Lagos is among the one-party states. We know the history of Lagos. Right from onset, Lagos has been a party that has been ruled by just one state. Though we have had name changes in the party from the AD to AC, from AC to ACN, until the major now brought about the APC. Even though George is telling us that it has always been a pattern in Lagos that the presidential election will always carry a different voting pattern from the governorship election. You can agree with me that the governing APC did not find it easy. If anything had rattled the party to the marrow, it was the last presidential election. That made us see the governor of the state, who is the party's governorship candidate, Sanwo-Olu, living the comforts, the cozy, his cozy office and apartment, and an apartment in government house, to personally go out there to vote. That is when we start seeing Sanwo-Olu going to the market, standing with market women, trying to sell. I don't know whether they are just social media hype and some of those funny things those in social media will always do, that you will see a situation where you see Sanwo-Olu on the bike wearing helmets, carrying somebody. Oh, you see Sanwo-Olu selling corn. You see Sanwo-Olu cleaning a house. I think I saw one WhatsApp statue where somebody was just making Sanwo-Olu everywhere. That showed you that even the governing party there didn't find it funny from what happened in Lagos. Going by what George Okoje said, we just conclude that yes, it is not going to be a December game with the presidential election.
Yes, going by what he has said, you would expect that Lagos APC will want to make a last stand in Lagos, and unfortunately, what would have been an interesting, political contest has become so toxic, and now we are seeing so much hate and ethnic. It has become more like some politicians have coined it into an ethnic, contest and all of that. But like George did point out, no two elections are the same. Lessons have been learned about what played out in the presidential, and now we are likely going to see something different with the governorship.
Well, let's go to River State. River State is not just a flashpoint, it's a war zone as far as the governorship election is concerned, because the state has very strong, formidable political actors. The governor himself, Nyesom Wike, who happens to be the leader of the G5, is actually having very strong contenders, not just in the candidate, but in the former Minister of Transportation, who happened to be a former governor in the state. Well, before we look at Rivers and analyze the situation and what we might be expecting from there, we have our correspondent in Port Harcourt, Anayo Onukuga, waiting in the wings to brief us of the situation so far in Lagos State. Anayo, you're welcome to the studio. It's nice having you live from there. Can you just quickly tell us the situation in Rivers in terms of voter turnout and the security situation, and let's say the performance of INEC machines, the Rivers so far?
Okay, thank you and good afternoon. I'm presently at Ugbema community in Abu Udwa local government area. It's just here and few other places that I've seen large turnout of voters. In other parts of the state, especially the Port Harcourt metropolis, the turnout is very low. And when you ask people, they tell you it's because of the experience on the last election that what they stated wasn't the outcome. Now, in the area of security, I'm seeing some security men at the polling units here. Other places, other polling units we have gone to around the state, especially in the rural areas, there you won't see even a single policeman or civil defense or anything called security there. If you ask the people, they say that's how they saw it, but they can manage themselves. Then just election cannot come to go the river state without violence. That one we know. At our Bakri community in Emo Haluku government area, 3 persons suspected to be political thugs were killed this morning during a clash between supporters of 2 opposing political parties. Are you with me, sir?
Yes.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. With 2 political parties. Then the former governor Chibike Rotimi voted and said after voting, he lamented that today's election is not between PDP and the APC, but between APC and the police and the Independent National Electoral Commission. What that means, I don't know. Thank you.
Well,
But it's interesting that we are having, this situation of people being killed in elections in Rivers State all over again. And you just pointed out that the security has not is not as security operatives are not as you know widespread prevalent as not as available as they ought to.
Yeah.
How do you see this pan out in the course of the elections going forward as elections
Uh,
continue? Do you sense any further breakdown in outbreak of violence in some of the areas you are?
that one is obvious because, like in a local government, Akukutoro local government area, they cancelled the election there today because of issues like that. Uh, River State is known like that. Even if it's a councillorship election, one side will agree and one side will not agree, and in the process, violence will occur. It's only here that I'm seeing that the people are like nothing like where I am now. Women,
well, Anayo, let's look at let's see whether we can actually be able to do some kind of prediction based on our own opinion. You are there in River State. You know that this is a state that have very powerful political bigwigs, apart from the governor himself, who is the leader of the G5. And we know he worked against his own party, the PDP, in the state. And that led to the victory of the APC governorship presidential candidate in the presidential election, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who eventually emerged the president-elect. What do you think about the governorship election? We know that the governor is actually working assiduously, working with ecclesiastic passion to make sure that his party, the PDP, retains power. And I think he's all out for his own anointed candidate of the PDP. But what do you think might just happen in terms of the Labour Party and the governing APC, where we have Rotimi Amechi working for her? So what can you really tell us about what might likely be the outcome of the governorship election and perhaps the state assembly election?
From what I will have gathered, it's still a tight race because almost all the political parties said they won't allow what happened during the presidential election to happen again. So all of them are working assiduously to ensure that they their candidates win in the election. Why they cancelled the Akuktoru local government election in Akuktoru local government area was because the voters refused the materials leaving the rate center because the key INEC officials, they're supposed to be at the polling units, were not there. So as at 3 p.m., as at 1 p.m., when this afternoon, when the thing could not leave the rack center, INEC has to put it off. But the race is a tight one. There are 3 leading political parties, as you know, and you can't decide yet until after the elections.
What is happening to the Labour Party and the Obi movement in the state?
The Labour Party is a political party. Obedient movement are people that came from diverse political backgrounds. So as the governorship and state assembly election came close, each group started endorsing their candidates of interest, and only few out of the movement still remained with the Labour Party.
Well, thank you very much, Anayo, for that update. And we just hope that we might still have the opportunity again to bring you back later in the day, where we will begin to see how things play out and when it will start getting a bit clearer for us to understand. Since you say it's a tight race. Thank you very much. It's why you heard what I said. In River State, it is still a tight race. But as tight as it is, we know that Wike is not a man who could always toy with. And River State is a state that has been polarized with the very, very powerful political bigwigs going their various way. We see Magnus Abe, the candidate, governorship candidate of the SDP. And we see the APC candidate having the backing of Rotimi Amechi. And then we know that the governor himself is one man that will not take any chances. What do you think from what am I?
Well, I don't think it's a tight race in River State because unlike the presidential election, the candidates are all people who are from the state, and the PDP candidate who is the speaker of the State House of Assembly is somebody the governor wants. And you know the politics of Wike was doing his politics different the way other people are doing it. You know, we have seen how Wike appointed how many thousands special advisors. These people were appointed solely to deliver their polling units. So I don't see that becoming a tight race. The opposition are there. they are strong. The candidates that are in the opposition political parties, they are strong candidates. They are people they know. So they will be dividing their votes, and at the end of the day, PDP will have the vote.
Well, thank you very much. We are actually going to go to Delta State, where we had earlier said that the Deputy Senate President and the governorship candidate of the APC might end up springing a surprise. Well, we have our correspondent in Delta State. We're talking of Felix. Is already on standby to give us the situation report in Delta State. Felix, you are welcome to the Leadership Podcast Studio. Can you just quickly tell us what is actually happening in Delta State in terms of the voter turnout, security situation, and the performance of INEC machines, the beavers? What is the situation so far?
Thank you very much, sir. The situation so far is partially okay because of the feedback we are getting from especially Delta Central, where there has been violence. But when you talk of Delta North, the election has been peaceful. Security is tight. You see joint military patrol, both soldiers, police, normal police, and all others like road safety, the civil defense, and others patrolling and at times manned polling units. In Delta Central, we've heard of the house of a prominent politician, John Naniseta Bliss, and we're also aware of the prominent PDP leader already arrested because of the arson. And that especially when we are hearing that almost 4 people have been gunned down, killed because of the political crisis here. When we even move to Ugeli, where we have the base of the 3 prominent gubernatorial candidates, Omar Gege from APC, Sheriff Oborowore of the PDP, and Kenneth Baggy of the FDP. They are both from Delta Central. And that is the situation why the place looks like a hot spot. Although the security men are on top of the situation, they have been trying to maintain peace there. But as far as security is concerned, everywhere is tight because there are patrol everywhere, and especially there are checkpoints and in every 3 or 4 electric posts. The distance is not too far to each other, and if you don't have your PVC, you will not be allowed to cross the checkpoint. That is the situation in Delta. So we are hoping that most of the, especially I'm in Ozogi Primary School now, voting is in progress. Some units have been counting, some are still voting, some are already counting. There is peace in Delta North, there is peace in Delta. We've not heard of any problem from Delta South. It's unlike Delta Central, where there have been crisis. The beavers in most of the places are working perfectly well, except in an area in Dokwa, where beavers have been returned to INEC based on the fact that they have been malfunctioning. And we are waiting for INEC to give a feedback on what will happen to that area where the beavers have been returned to their headquarters. So that is the situation in Delta State as at now. Subsequently, we'll be feeding you with other information. Hello, sir.
Yes. Felix, now let's look at the voting pattern. Let's try to see if we can be able to capture the mindset of the electorate in Delta. We know very well that we have a very strong contender in the person of the Deputy Senate President, Ovie Omo Agege, who happens to be the governorship candidate of the APC. What do you think might be the possible outcome from what you would have seen and what you would have actually observed in terms of the direction you might think the election might be heading to? Perhaps from little you know about the mindset of the electorate in the state, what do you think might be the likely outcome? Would the PDP retain the mandate, or the APC might as well just record a major upset in the state, as did the Labour Party in some crucial states in the presidential election? Where do you think this is all heading to, and what might be the likely outcome so far?
Yes, if you taking the issue from the last presidential election where Labour Party, the obedience, brought a sort of surprise in the state. But people are not looking at that because the sing-song obedience will go for the best candidate. And if you look at the outcome of the presidential election where that APC won in Delta South and Delta Central, at the senatorial level, and with the way people are being shouting APC and they look at Omar Gege, his performance and others, APC is likely to come out victorious. The obedient, the surprise Labour Party brought, people are the voters are not looking at it from that way, because what they said was that they only voted for Obi, not Labour Party. And with the fact that Delta Central, their leaders, most of them have vowed to vote to support Omar Gege from the APC candidate. And in Delta, and then Delta South too, which is made up of Ijoy, Sekiri, and Urobo, they've also vowed to support APC. So at the end of the day, with the permutation on ground, APC is likely to carry the day. Even in Delta North, where the incumbent governor is from, the sing song, even from his Ika, the base, the Agbo, and the Car Southwest and the Car Northeast local government areas, it was a sort of intimidation there because people were trying to vote for APC. Being that is the base of the incumbent governor. Especially when his daughter is vying for the post of is going to the House of Assembly. So they are looking at it as it's a must to deliver the daughter. But it was a resistance from the people. So from what we are seeing and from what the way the election is going, APC and Omar Agege, who is the gubernatorial candidate, is likely to come out victorious at the end of the day.
Well, thank you, Felix. We didn't get you very well in terms of the voter apathy, in terms of the voter turnout. Please, can you just tell us what you think, or what is the situation there in terms of voter turnout? And then we didn't even get you clearly on the security situation. Has there been any case of vote buying, ballot snatching, and so forth? Please, can you just give us an update?
Yes, about vote buying. You see, the vote buying has been on, not today, because at a point earlier this week, the state government paid 10,000 naira to all the civil servants in the state. So people saw it as a sort of vote buying. The vote buying is not at the polling center. As of today, we've not seen money exchanging hands or any. So the only thing we observe is intimidation of voters, so that they can vote for a particular candidate in a choice area. As per security situation, like I said, there is joint patrol of security forces, both soldiers, policemen, and civil defense, even road safety. They are on the roads commanding, directing and influencing free flow of traffic, evaluate to the physically challenged or those that will move far to cast their vote. But as it is now, there is in Delta North, we've not heard of, there's no problem as well. People are voting, though there is voter apathy, because people said, well, from what, unlike last presidential election, where a lot of people came out to vote, today we saw that it's not up to the number of people that came out that day to vote, because the complaint from people is that the one they voted last during the presidential election, their vote didn't count. And so those of them that came out, they only come out to exercise their franchise. Unlike during the presidential election, when virtually everybody came out to vote. So the bottom line today is that there is voter apathy, and the population of voters that came out to vote is not as that of the last presidential election.
Okay, in less than a minute, can you just give us an idea of how whether materials got to riverine areas on time? You know, Delta is one of those areas that have a lot of riverine communities. How was electoral materials deployed to in those areas?
Yes, during the last presidential election, electoral materials were delayed. In fact, Warri South West was the most hit. But unlike now, the materials left as early as Thursday. So the excuse of material not getting to the polling to the riverine areas was not there. Then again, some of the NEC officers, I mean the returning officers that didn't perform well during the last presidential election were changed. So as a result of that, there's no complaint from the riverine areas of delayed voting material or electoral material. So as it is now, voting is going on, materials are there. So we've not heard of any report that whether result sheet or any of the materials were not available. So that is the position, sir.
Thank you very much, Felix, for that update from Delta State. What is that name given to Delta State? Is it the heartbeat of yeah, heartbeat? No, it is the heartbeat of the nation. So can you remember? Well, before we round up, let's just quickly look at what Felix has said. Number one, I think that is a state where we have gotten we've heard of beavers malfunction. We say the beavers will return to INEC due to the fact that it could not function well. Well, we could still give it to INEC after promising that this time around beavers there will be no issues of beavers malfunction. We are seeing it happening, even though it might not be 100%. And from all we've been having all through here, I think it's only in Delta State that we've had a case of malfunctioning of the beavers. But look at what he just said about what might be the likely outcome. Well, Leadership Weekend reported today that the Senate President, Deputy Senate President and governorship candidate of the APC is among the big betters in this governorship election. And Felix just confirmed it there, that from the way voting is happening and from the mood among the electorate, the Deputy Senate President and the APC governorship candidate, Omo Agege, is gradually coasting to victory. How possible can this be, Chibuzo, with the incumbent governor, who is actually the vice presidential candidate of the PDP? What do you think?
Well, Felix is on the ground. He probably has his own, data and facts on why he thinks it's going to turn out that way. But events are still unfolding. When the results begin to come from other local governments in the far-flung areas, perhaps the picture will become clearer.
Well, so do you see that what Felix just told us about the likely outcome? Do you see that actually happening, or are you thinking that will possibly happen?
Well, he is in the state that it's difficult to defeat an incumbent who don't want his secret exposed. But in this election, anything can happen. Anything can happen. Voters are voting for candidates; they are not voting for
political parties.
Yes.
Well, with Delta State, I think we will actually come to the end of the first segment of Nigeria Decides 2023 in Leadership Podcast. Well, we will actually take a short break and we'll be back perhaps in an hour or so to actually give updates and then discuss the situation so far as it is in the states of the Federation where the governorship election is taking place. Well, we will actually keep you up with happenings in and around the state. We'll be back.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.